Okay guys, so I just got a CRX dash for my 1990 Civic hatchback. So here is the gauge cluster hood that came with the dash that I got. This is out of a 1990 CRX SI. This is out of a 1990 Civic hatch. Now this is a base model gauge cluster. The hatches had a tack on them, even from the 9091 base. The 88, 89 hatches didn't have a tack. The 9091s did. The CRXs from 9091 did not have a tack. So if you own a 9091 CRX, you can get a hatch cluster if you want a tack. It actually is exactly the same as the CRX SI cluster. Now, this cluster fits perfectly in this bezel, and it fits perfectly in this bezel. Now here's some differences. So these gauge cluster hoods, in terms of the buttons, okay, they look like the buttons are identical. Like if you look, see this button and that button, this button and that button. I counted the pins and I looked to see, you know, where the spaces are. They look exactly identical. Like you could swap them over and they would work. But here's where the differences lie. So the buttons, so if you notice, these are turned 90 degrees. These are straight up and down, these are horizontal. So if you look at these, the picture of like the dimmer switch and the hazard picture and the defrost picture, if you take these buttons and put them on that or vice versa, all of these are going to be twisted 90 degrees. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But other than that, they look to be the same buttons. Now here is a 88-89 Civic. Well, this is an 89 Civic SI dash or cluster. Now this is the 9091. As you can tell, this is round and this is boxed off. So if you try to use this in either one of these cluster hoods, it's not going to work. Like, I don't know if you can see, like it looks like you could probably make it work, but like it's never gonna sit flush. Like this is how it's gonna sit. So if you try to use it, you're gonna see that boxed off bit at the top. I mean, it looks ugly. So don't even bother with that guy. Unless you want to trim this and make your own custom thing, it's not gonna look right. So also, if you look back here, so basically if you have a 88-89 cluster, you're going to want to get the 88-89 cluster hood with it. I don't know if the cluster hoods from 88-89 and 9091 switch over to the different dashes. That I couldn't tell you. But it's just from what I know. But if you look at the backs of the clusters, they do look very similar. So this is the 9091, this is the 88-89. So if you look back here, these plugins all look identical, right? And that looks identical. But however, I was reading the forums and they said that the wiring is different. So you will have to splice, so you'll have to look at a wiring diagram and change out the pins from, you know, the different spots in the connector. So you can actually take the old connector, and I'm not going to show you a video of this because it's late, but you can depin the connector, right, and just move the wires to different spots, and I'm sure you can plug it back in and it'll work just fine. So you don't actually have to do any soldering, just depin the old connector and repin it to the correct locations and just plug it back into your cluster and it should work out just fine if you're doing the swap. So let's say you have a 9091 hatch and you want to put an 89 CRX cluster and dashboard in it. Yeah, you just switch out the pins in your connectors to the correct locations according to the wiring diagrams, plug it in, and it should work just fine. Now the speedometer cable attachment looks exactly the same. Like you could literally switch these out. They would work just fine. And these lights, honestly, they look interchangeable. So a lot of similarities there. Even the tabs look identical. Well, they look very close. So, but yeah. So yeah, that's some information for you. Hopefully this video helped you if you're thinking of attempting the swap. Now, as you can tell, there's glue around this thing. So my old cluster had a cracked cover for the cluster, plastic cover. So I took the old one off of the CRX cluster was messed up, and since the tab broke, I glued it on. But it works just fine. They're the exact, like, you can actually switch them out. They're interchangeable.